So good evening, everyone. Buenas noches. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight celebrating Pride Uptown.
In talking about Upper Manhattan LGBT history, and in particular LGBT cultural history, please understand tonight's a first. It's an exploratory evening beginning to define what we can do together. Eric Washington is a local historian, author. His work has covered a wide range of topics. And as I noted, the conversations that were going on as we gathered tonight, the breadth of Eric's understanding about Uptown history and the people who have helped make that history is fantastic. Sitting next to Eric is Memphis, Washington, which is a reminder that our history is just as much in the future as it is in the past. Memphis is an important part of the Word Up Collective, helping to run Word Up Community Bookstore at this point. I'm going to jump over here to Miriam Frank, whose title that she gave us is Labor and Community Historian and Activist, who has written a book about queer people in the labor movement. Sitting in between is Yoseli Castillo, who was, I can't quite come up with the right word, but one of the rocks of making Galdi, Gays and Lesbians for Dominican Empowerment work and making it one of the strongest lesbian and gay presences in the neighborhood.
We used to go downtown, the bars, and in college, definitely my feminist writers that I read about and went to see. All of that gave me kind of the tools to know that I wanted to create LGBT spaces within the Dominican community, and I made that till this day.
There were two clergy who organized and said this should happen. There were a couple of guys also who owned a cheese shop on this street, kind of fancy cheese that you don't buy in the supermarket. But it was reasonable. They didn't have like these super expensive cheeses, but they were, party cheeses. And basically it was a gay hangout. I mean, the guys really they didn't have a lot of places where they could go. There wasn't really a bar up here that they felt comfortable in. In the spring and the summer and the part of the fall, they used to see each other all the time in the park, I found out. But Uptown Cheese was sort of a little more a safer place. Pastor Barbara Lundblad, who is still in the Lutheran clergy, and Rabbi Maggie Wenig at Beth Am were talking with the gay guys and said, we should try something. We should try to get people together for a potluck.
So one of the things that I like about Word Up is that it's a place uptown that you can go in and you don't actually have to spend money, and you can sit down and you can have a good time and you can meet with people and you can talk with people and you can host events. Thinking of it as a place for congregation, I think number one, there are a couple of ways that happen, and one of those ways is through bringing together volunteers. So people who come in, who need a place to be, who need space, and who have maybe an hour or 2, 3-hour chunks of time once a week, maybe every once in a while, can work from home and do this. And so in that way, it brings a lot of voices into a space and gives a lot of different ways for people to engage in the space that isn't necessarily the way that other places run sometimes.
Is that we're constantly being conscious of interpolating, say, LGBTQ history or incidental or information in whatever the mainstream is. I give tours of Trinity Church Cemetery up in Washington Heights, and I'm very conscious of there are like no known African American burials there. But I've given focused Black history tours there because I know African Americans have been here as long as anybody else, so there must be connections. I know there must be gay and lesbian connections, and I try to find those and keep that try to always be conscious of folding in as much as I can so that it's very clear that you're not just giving a sort of a point and shoot kind of like just sort of everyday what's to be expected kind of presentation, that you're always looking for the bodies that weren't present, or literally, the presences that were obviously there, even if they were not so obvious.
My feminism is visible. It's big-breasted. It's smart mouth. It's often discounted and ignored. It's always wearing shades or throwing it. It's got bottom grills and 3 master's degrees. It's Tiana Taylor in that Kanye video, dressed like Queen Latifah and set it off. It ain't woman enough for the straight ones. It ain't man